here at the Old Bridle Path Trailhead in New Hampshire. Today, going to be hiking an extremely popular loop, starting with Little Haystack to Lincoln to Lafayette. For a full guide on this one, you can check the link in the description below. But essentially, this is a portion of the Franconia Ridge Trail here in New Hampshire. This loop should be just under 9 miles with about 4,000 feet of gain. You can do it in either way. The more common way would be to go counterclockwise. So starting on the waterfalls and then working up to Little Haystack, ending on Lafayette and then coming down. There are a number of trails, and I think they're volunteers who work at the front here, kind of make sure you know what you're doing before you start this hike. I imagine because it's just so popular and there's a lot of inexperienced hikers that come. Have Aria and Jackie today, so this is a dog-friendly hike. There you go.
That's good. Good girl.
As you can tell, the first few miles of this trail are just absolutely gorgeous. So many creek crossings and little waterfalls, cascades. I will say, the earlier in the year you do this, the higher the water will typically be. So waterproof shoes or boots, extra pair of socks probably wouldn't hurt. Not as hot as when I did the Pemi, but humidity is just as high. You can kind of see it in the air. Before you summit Little Haystack, you have one of those typical New Hampshire climbs. You can see it right here. Very rocky, steep, today muddy. So although you're very close, this is probably the hardest climb you have of the day. Top of Little Haystack here, in and out of the clouds, maybe have views in a second. So you can see obviously the summit right there, and then the ridge over to Lincoln, which is like out there, and then Lafayette, which is out of view behind it. Okay, after tagging Little Haystack, which is a 4,000 footer for all you checking those off in New Hampshire, you just follow obvious trail here, and it's about 2 miles over to Mount Lafayette. Imagine mountainous views over here. You got the Bonds, you got some more 4,000 footers in front of you. You got this iconic ridge, which we might be able to see at some point. And then to the left of you, down into Franconia Notch, Cannon Mountain, we got a whole bunch of clouds, which isn't super surprising. We kind of knew that was the weather going into today, but always a bummer, especially when you do have the views in New Hampshire, to not be able to see them. This is why this loop is so popular. Obviously, you got pretty much everything: mountaintops, ridge walking, waterfalls, the best New Hampshire has to offer. And then of course you're also tagging 3 of the mountains over 4,000 feet, which there's 48 here, and people like to try to check them all off. If you were looking for a longer day, there's so many different options up here. You could go up and do the full ridgeline starting over at Flume and Liberty, working over here. You could do the Pemi Loop, which I'll link in the description below. I just ran that in a day. And then of course there's just so many other variations because we're on the Appalachian Trail. Summit of Mount Lincoln for Aria and Jackie. Their first time this week. For me, my second. And the view's much worse this time, but that's okay. Alright, next up is Lafayette, and you can't see it, but it's the highest peak on this loop. It's like 5,500 feet, something like that. Very similar to getting to Lincoln. Bit of a decline down the ridge, and then about 500 or so foot climb to the summit. For those of you who watched my Carntool video in Ireland, almost identical conditions, but when I got to the summit there, all the clouds parted, so maybe we'll have the same luck when we get to the top of Lafayette. Yeah. If you are having any navigation, this is pretty much your most important point. You're going to want to go left here, not where Jackie's going, because that could take you on a much longer loop, and left will take you back down to where you started. Not a whole bunch of anything, but we have a tiny view here, and then looking over to the left you can see maybe a cannon poking out a little bit. Really cool clouds though. So because we didn't get views today, I have edited in the ones that you should be able to get from the top of these mountains, but yeah, it's kind of always a crapshoot when you're hiking in the White Mountains, especially in the summer where there's so much humidity, fog, low-hanging clouds. You never really know what will be the cause of your views to be blocked. But if you do get a sunny day up here, take it in and really enjoy it and be grateful, because they are not super common. Not that it would have mattered today, but just to address drones for a second, New Hampshire is actually extremely strict about drone usage here, because basically if there is an alpine area, so like mountainous terrain above tree line, you're not allowed to fly them. And specifically the Franconia Ridge trail, which although there's different names for the trails we were on, that's more or less the trail that we took today, you're not allowed to fly on. You can't fly near trailheads. So yeah, drone use here is basically impossible now. A lot of new legislation has passed in the last 3 to 5 years since I originally filmed a lot of stuff here. As always, just encourage you to research any kind of regulations before you do fly.
Okay, honey. Come on. Come on, I'm gonna go first.
This should be fun. Green leaf hut here. Great place to get some snacks if you really needed them. Grab some water, bathroom, or just rest up. And if the weather's bad, bonus that you can go in there for shelter. Your next juncture here would be to get back on the old bridle path this way. And from here, it's about 3 miles back to the car. Old bridle path here is definitely more technical than the one on the way up. Not like higher class, just lots of rocks and roots and steep stuff. And when it's wet like today, it's just really slow going. The section that Jackie just shot me going down is probably the most technical on this route here, probably because it's really well worn out, but also it's like arguably low class 3 scrambling, depending on how you look at it, but at least high class 2. And yeah, when you add some water to it, it's very slick. You can almost see the ridge. There, there, there. Oh. Jesus, sorry. If you're from the Northeast and new to my channel, welcome. I do virtual trail guides based in Colorado, but I have a ton of stuff here in New England and New Hampshire. So hit the subscribe button not to miss any future hike related content. Throw this video a like if you found it at all helpful. Be sure to check out my full guide on my website, thevirtualsherpa.com. In the full guide, you will have everything you need to know about this hike. So what does that mean? It means my GPX file, so you can download this route to your phone, to your favorite app, and follow it along. It'll have information about parking. It'll have information about water sources. It'll have information about dogs and what you need to know there. Camping, really everything from A to Z. In terms of doing this loop, Lafayette first versus Little Haystack first, honestly, I don't think it really matters. This trail that we're coming down, bridle path here, is definitely more technical than the flowing rivers or flowing waters or whatever it's called up to Little Haystack. You could easily trail run this and maybe go down that way. It's up to you. I think why they tell you to go counterclockwise, so starting at Little Haystack, is because you get on the ridge earlier in the day and get that out of the way if weather rolls in, would be my guess, because I don't think there's any real difficulty. If anything, this is way more difficult to down climb, in my opinion, than the other trail. It's all going to depend on your conditions, but I would say like waterproof / extra pair of socks if you don't like hiking in wet things. Running in wet things probably would be a good idea. Outside of that, you can fill up your water at the green leaf hut there, but I definitely recommend carrying a decent amount. Obviously food, 10 essentials, all that fun stuff. With Aria, with a dog, she's a very experienced hiker, but this is a dog-friendly hike as long as your dog is okay with a little bit of scrambling. And I tried to show some of the more difficult ones. In most cases, if there is a difficult section, there is a little bit of a workaround if you need it. Always bummed that you don't get the summit views that you'd like, but glad I have some recent footage I can just insert and show for those of you who are interested. But overall, yeah, I hadn't done this loop in quite some time, maybe 6 years or so. So happy to get back on it again to show it to Jackie. Well, try to at least. Basically back at the trailhead now. So on behalf of Jackie, Aria, and myself, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next adventure.